So joining me live now is the Shadow Minister for Early Childhood Education, Amanda Rishworth. Can you sort this out for us, Amanda Rishworth, please? Is this Labor's policy now to put a wage increase, a number, in your submission to the Fair Work Commission?
Well, look, what we've consistently said, and I don't think it's controversial, Laura, that we want people's pay packets to keep up with the cost of living. I mean, that shouldn't be controversial. We know that the Liberal Party has bragged that by design they've kept wages low in this country, and Labor's merely stating what I think a lot of people expect is that their pay packets do keep up with the cost of living. So we will work with business, we'll work with across community and society when we put our submission into the Fair Work Commission.
Okay, what does that mean if you say you work with business? Because business say 5.1% is too high. So what is the policy here? You've never put a number. You've never put a number on a submission before to the Fair Work Commission. Has that changed now?
What we've said is that people's pay packets should keep up with the cost of living, and it should be actually a bipartisan position. It is very interesting, I find, that the Prime Minister is now arguing in throwing bombs into this election campaign, effectively arguing people's wages should go backwards, that people's quality of life and living standards should go backwards. That is what the Prime Minister is saying when he argues that pay packets should not keep up with the cost of living.
That's not my question, though. Has Labor changed in its strategy here? Will you now, from here on in, put a submission to the Fair Work Commission with a number on it? The government has put a submission in laying out what's going on in the economy at the moment and hasn't put a number on it. So is that changed from Labor?
Well, what we hear from the Prime Minister is he actually wants pay packets to go backwards compared to the cost of living.
With respect,
that is what the Prime Minister is saying.
That's not my question.
With his criticism.
That's not my question. Is this a change in strategy from Labor that you would now... I mean, you've been talking about wages for the better part of 3 years, if not a decade, and low wages. You want them to go up. That is very clear.
We've outlined a number of policies.
In your submissions to the Fair Work Commission, will you now be putting a number in that submission?
We're not in government, Laura. We will, if we're elected to government.
No, but you're trying to be. So what's the answer?
We will work with unions, with businesses to put in a submission. But our principle is clear here, Laura. Our principle is that pay should keep up with the cost of living, and I don't understand how that is controversial. In addition, we've announced a number of policies, some basic things that the Coalition can't even back in, that people should get paid the minimum wage in this country. I mean, the Prime Minister has failed to even agree that workers in this country should get the minimum wage. The Prime Minister has failed to agree that if you're working on a work site, that you should get paid the same doing the same job. That's a basic principle. And he's failed to back in and commit to supporting aged care workers in their fight for a decent wage increase for the work they do, which was, of course, recommended by the Royal Commission. So the government has failed enormously on the question of wages. Labor is putting out what is a very sensible plan, and the government really, it should be bipartisan.
Okay, well, so if you win government, will you pin wages to headline inflation?
Well, as has been regularly said, the government doesn't set the wages. The Fair Work Commission sets the wages, and we will.
And what will you be asking the Fair Work Commission to consider? Will you be asking the Fair Work Commission to consider 5.1% increase?
We will be putting in a submission looking at all the economic factors that are happening at the moment, and we will stick by the principle that people deserve a pay increase that keeps up with the cost of living. And as I said, it just shouldn't be controversial.
Well, it is controversial because Labor has never put a number in a submission. Will you be doing that?
I have outlined our principles that we will take if we're elected.
I know, but it's a yes or no answer, to be fair.
We will work through these issues and we will put a submission in. And as I said, we support the principle that people's pay should keep up with the cost of living. If the Prime Minister thinks otherwise, then he's got to come out and say it. He's got to come out and say, I don't support wages keeping up with the cost of living. I support living standards going backwards in this country. That's what the Prime Minister should come out and admit today, and he should be asked that question. Does he support living standards in this country going backwards? Because we know that has been a deliberate design feature of his policy.
Okay, if you win government, this is obviously central to your election strategy. Would you pin wages to inflation and put it in legislation?
Well, the Fair Work Commission determines the minimum wage. The Fair Work Commission is the independent umpire, and that is who determines the minimum wage. So there are a number of things that are in legislation pinned to inflation, like the pension, for example. Is the government planning to change that? If the government...
I'm asking you, you want to be government in just 10 days' time, so what's the answer? Would you do that?
The Fair Work Commission example. The Fair Work Commission sets wages and conditions. Yeah. The Fair Work Commission sets the minimum wage. Let's be really clear about that. But it's only Labor that actually has a plan to grow the economy, that actually has a plan to increase economic growth, which doesn't put pressure on inflation. The government has announced no plans, just more wasteful spending, whereas it's been Labor that has outlined a plan that actually leads to economic growth. And whether that is in childcare and supporting families, which leads to economic growth, more second income earners working, paying their taxes, whether it's our lower energy prices that will allow industry to be more productive. These are the types of policies that outline a growth agenda in the economy. The government has nothing. They have nothing that shows productive growth in this economy. And that's why Labor's got a comprehensive plan, along with secure jobs, to also have an economic growth agenda.
So if the Fair Work Commission decided to raise the minimum wage by 5.1%, would you support that?
They're an independent umpire. I mean, when has a government tried to interfere with the independent umpire?
Would you welcome a 5.1% increase?
I believe in the Fair Work umpire, a Fair Work Commission, properly looking at all the elements in the economy and looking at inflation, which is a big issue. Part of their job is to make sure that workers are looked after in this country. And as a principle, the Labor Party supports pay keeping up with the cost of living. The government clearly does not.
But why headline inflation? Why aren't you looking at underlying inflation?
We will look at all the economic indicators to ensure, as I said, the principle that people's pay packets keep up with the cost of living. The government has made clear, and really through their attacks on Labor today, has made it really clear they don't support that. They support workers in this country going backwards. They don't have an economic growth plan that will ensure there's not upward pressure on inflation, not like Labor has, whether it is childcare, whether it's energy prices. These are all about increasing productivity, increasing participation in our economy, and these are the types of measures that are desperately needed. When it comes to childcare, for example, we've got businesses crying out for workers. There are workers that are at home who are waiting. They're waiting, if there was cheaper childcare, to go back to work, to fill those skills gaps in our economy. We've got a plan for that.
Sorry to interrupt. One final question. Business this morning has said that a 5.1% increase in the minimum wage would be inflationary, and it means that jobs would be lost. Do you have any evidence to dispute that?
Look, what we need is decent wages and conditions in this country, and we need policies that grow our economy, in an inclusive way. And Labor has a plan to do that. The Liberal Party does not. There has been no ideas from this government. This government is old, it's tired, and it doesn't have any plans. Just saying, vote for me for more of the same. Well, I think Australians have worked this Prime Minister out. He clearly wants to keep downward pressure on wages to make sure that people's pay packets are not keeping up with the cost of living, and he should be under significant pressure on that today.
All right, we'll see. His media conference will be sometime in the next hour, I believe, so we'll see what happens there. Amanda Rishworth, thanks so much for your time.